Martha had lived a long life, longer than many around her could even imagine. 78 years had passed, and each year had left its marks in the lines on her face, the stiffness in her hands, and the quiet depth in her eyes. She had seen things most people only read about in books. She had experienced loss so profound it hollowed out parts of her heart and watched as the people she loved most drifted away, leaving behind memories that were sometimes comforting and sometimes unbearably painful. Martha's home was modest, a small house on a quiet street, filled with furniture that had aged along with her and photographs that reminded her of days that could never return. The walls, though neatly kept, felt heavy with time, as if they themselves carried the weight of all the years she had lived there. On most mornings, she would sit by the window, holding a cup of tea that had gone lukewarm, and watch the world outside move at a pace she no longer could match. Children ran along the sidewalks, their laughter piercing and bright. Couples walked hand in hand, lost in their conversations. Neighbors hurried past, preoccupied with errands. And Martha felt as if she were invisible, a shadow in a world too busy to notice. Her neighbors often expressed pity. They would smile awkwardly, nod at her as if she were fragile porcelain that might shatter at any moment, and speak in hushed tones about how lonely she must be. Some would drop by with small gifts or treats, thinking they were helping, but Martha knew that no gesture could fill the emptiness she felt. Friends she had made decades ago had passed away one by one. Letters that once arrived regularly stopped coming, and the phone that used to ring with cheerful voices now stayed silent. She had tried to keep herself busy, reading old novels, listening to classical music, and tending to her tiny garden, but these small joys only reminded her of what was missing: the connection, the laughter, the companionship that had once made life feel vibrant. On a rainy afternoon, as the drizzle tapped gently against her window, Martha found herself staring into her cup of tea. The steam curled upward, carrying the faint aroma of warmth and comfort, yet it could not lift the heaviness in her chest. She sighed, a long, deep sigh that seemed to carry the weight of all her years, and whispered to herself, "Why does happiness always belong to others and never to me? Why does it feel like life has left me behind?" The question lingered in the quiet room, unanswered, echoing off the walls and filling the spaces between the photographs and the furniture. For a moment, she closed her eyes and imagined a life where she could feel the lightness of joy again. A life where she could laugh without thinking twice, where each day brought excitement instead of monotony. But when she opened her eyes, the reality of her small, quiet home returned, and with it, a familiar sense of emptiness. It was in this moment, sitting alone in her modest living room, that Martha realized something crucial. She had spent decades waiting for happiness to arrive at her doorstep, as if it were a guest she could summon with a polite invitation. She had waited for circumstances to be perfect, for people to be kind, for life to reward her for surviving its hardships. And all the while, she had overlooked the one thing that could have changed everything: herself. She realized that joy was not something that came from outside, but something that needed to be nurtured from within. Martha understood that she had a choice she had never fully embraced. She could continue to sit by her window, watching life pass her by, or she could take the first small step toward finding happiness in her own way, no matter how small or simple that step might be. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. At her age, change felt like a mountain she was too weary to climb, yet the thought of continuing on the path of quiet despair felt far worse. She remembered the times when she had felt truly alive, the mornings spent laughing with her children, the evenings when friends would gather around her table, sharing stories and warmth, the moments when she had painted and written letters, when life had felt rich with purpose and color. That spark, though dimmed by time and sorrow, was still within her. Martha knew that if she could find a way to ignite it again, even just a little, she could rediscover the sense of joy that had once been hers. And so, that rainy afternoon, Martha made a silent promise to herself. She promised that she would no longer wait for happiness to find her. She would seek it in small, deliberate ways, in the things she could control, and in the moments she often overlooked. Perhaps she could start by noticing the little joys around her: the scent of rain on the pavement, the laughter of children outside, the warmth of her tea. Perhaps she could offer a kind word to someone passing by, or help a neighbor with a task that seemed small but meaningful. Perhaps she could pick up her paintbrush again, or write a letter to an old friend, reaching across time and distance to rekindle connections she thought had been lost forever. Martha did not know how long it would take or what obstacles she would face. She did not know if the spark of joy she hoped to find would grow into a flame or flicker and fade. But she felt something she had not felt in years, a sense of possibility. For the first time in decades, she felt that life might still have surprises for her, that happiness might not be a stranger after all, and that even in the quietest, loneliest moments, she had the power to create light for herself. As she set her empty cup on the table and gazed out at the street, she felt a gentle warmth in her chest. It was not the joy she longed for, not yet, but it was the beginning, the first step on a journey that could lead her to something she had almost forgotten existed, the happiness that had always been waiting for her within. The very next morning, Martha woke up with a sense of determination she hadn't felt in years. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening with droplets that reflected the pale morning light. She dressed slowly, deliberately, savoring the ritual of pulling on her cardigan and tying her shoes, something she had done countless times before but now felt different. She decided to begin with something small, something manageable. Sitting at her kitchen table, she took a blank sheet of paper and a pen and wrote down 3 things she was grateful for. At first, it felt awkward, almost forced. But as she wrote, a subtle warmth began to spread through her chest. She noted the sound of birds outside, the comforting taste of her morning tea, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. Simple things, almost trivial, yet they carried a weight of beauty she had forgotten to notice. As the days passed, this simple practice became a ritual. Each morning, Martha wrote 3 new things she was grateful for. Sometimes it was the laughter of children playing outside, sometimes a neighbor's friendly wave, sometimes the comfort of her favorite blanket. And with each entry, she felt lighter, as if a burden she hadn't known she was carrying was slowly lifting. She began to notice small moments of happiness that had always been there but had gone unrecognized, hidden beneath years of worry and sorrow. Gratitude, she realized, was a seed, and with each acknowledgement, the seed grew, sprouting tiny buds of joy. Encouraged by this discovery, Martha started looking outward. She began offering help to her neighbors, simple gestures that did not require great effort but had a surprising effect. She carried groceries for Mrs. Thompson, who lived across the street and often struggled with heavy bags. She fixed the loose hinge on Mr. Patel's gate, knowing it had bothered him for weeks. She listened to young mothers in the neighborhood share their frustrations and joys, offering a patient ear and kind words. Each act of giving, no matter how small, brought a smile to someone else's face, and those smiles returned to her in waves of warmth that made her feel alive in a way she had not felt for decades. She realized that joy, when shared, expanded, multiplying in ways that solitude could never produce. In addition to helping others, Martha returned to her passions. She had once loved painting, but the brushes had gathered dust for decades. One afternoon, she dusted off her paints and brushes and started with simple strokes on a blank canvas. At first, the movements felt stiff, unfamiliar, but soon her hand remembered the rhythm of color and form. The world of shapes and hues drew her in, transporting her beyond the confines of her small house and the quiet of her routine life. She began to paint every day, letting her emotions pour onto the canvas. Each painting became a reflection of her growing inner light, a tangible expression of the happiness she was slowly cultivating. Writing, too, returned to her life. Martha wrote letters to old friends, people she had lost touch with over the years, sharing memories and stories that had long been tucked away in the corners of her mind. She received replies in return, letters filled with nostalgia, laughter, and even tears. These exchanges reminded her that connections could be rekindled, that relationships, like seeds, only needed care to bloom again. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a recognition that life still had depth and richness to offer, even in her later years. Martha also discovered joy in the simplest daily moments. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee in the morning, the sunlight streaming through her window, the distant sound of children playing in the streets. All these ordinary experiences became sources of delight. She began to observe life more attentively, savoring its details instead of rushing through the hours. She smiled at strangers, greeted neighbors with warmth, and allowed herself to feel the beauty in ordinary things that she had once overlooked. As weeks turned into months, Martha's transformation became noticeable not only to herself but to those around her. Her posture straightened, her face brightened, and her eyes held a spark that had been absent for years. People in her neighborhood began to stop by more often, drawn not only by her friendly demeanor but also by the quiet energy of someone who had discovered a profound inner peace. Children sat beside her to hear stories from her youth, neighbors sought her advice, and she found herself laughing more than she had in decades. Martha realized that happiness was not dependent on wealth, comfort, or circumstance. It was a choice, a daily commitment to see the good, to nurture joy, and to offer kindness in every interaction. The most important realization came one afternoon when she was helping a young mother carry a stroller up the stairs. The mother thanked her profusely, tears in her eyes, and Martha felt a sudden rush of emotion. In that moment, she understood that happiness was not something external that could be obtained or bought. It was something she had created within herself through gratitude, action, and connection. She had discovered that the heart, when open and attentive, could find joy in every situation, no matter how difficult life might seem. Martha smiled to herself, a quiet, contented smile, feeling a sense of peace that had eluded her for decades. She knew that life would continue to have challenges, but she had found a way to meet each day with a heart ready to embrace the light, to offer love, and to find beauty even in small, fleeting moments. Months passed, and the changes in Martha's life became more profound with each day. Her home, once quiet and heavy with memories of solitude, now hummed with a gentle warmth that came not from visitors or possessions, but from her own heart. She had discovered a truth that many people spend a lifetime searching for: happiness is not a gift handed down by fate or circumstances, it is a practice, a choice, a cultivation of the mind and spirit. Each act of kindness she performed, each moment of gratitude she acknowledged, each small joy she allowed herself to notice had combined into something far greater than she had ever imagined. It was as if her entire being had been awakened from a long slumber, and now she saw life with eyes that were wide open, attuned to beauty, possibility, and connection. People in the neighborhood began to notice the difference in Martha. Where she had once been a figure of quiet sympathy, now she became a source of inspiration. Children would run to her door, eager for her stories, her laughter, her gentle encouragement. Young parents sought her advice and wisdom, finding comfort in her calm presence and the steady confidence she radiated. Even strangers passing by her street would pause to greet her, sensing the warmth that seemed to radiate effortlessly from her. Martha had become, without fanfare or proclamation, a living example of joy in action. She realized that her happiness was not isolated or selfish, it created ripples that touched everyone around her, often in ways she could not fully see. The transformation was not about material wealth or comfort. Her house remained small, her belongings modest, and her daily life still included the challenges and inconveniences that come with aging. But Martha had learned to meet every situation, no matter how difficult, with a heart that was open, receptive, and ready to see the positive. A leaking roof no longer frustrated her endlessly, instead, she saw it as a reminder of the impermanence of things and the importance of patience. A cold morning no longer brought despair, instead, it became an opportunity to savor warmth, whether in the sunlight, in her blanket, or in the act of brewing a comforting cup of tea. She had discovered that happiness was never dependent on the absence of problems but on the presence of perspective. Her daily rituals became a foundation of her contentment. Mornings still began with gratitude, but the list had grown longer and richer, including people, small experiences, emotions, and even challenges that taught her lessons. Her letters to friends had become a form of meditation, connecting her not only with others but also with the parts of herself that she had almost forgotten. Painting continued to be a joyful expression of her inner life, capturing emotions and memories with every brushstroke. Even her simple walks around the neighborhood became adventures in observation and mindfulness, noticing flowers, birds, and the subtle changes in the sky that many others overlooked. One afternoon, as she sat on her porch, watching the sun begin its slow descent, a young woman from the street approached her. She was a stranger, but her eyes carried the kind of exhaustion and worry that Martha recognized instantly. The woman hesitated, then asked softly, "How do you stay so happy, even when life is hard?" Martha looked at her, seeing not just the question, but the yearning behind it. She smiled gently, realizing that she had waited decades to understand this herself, and now she had the opportunity to share it. "Happiness isn't something that happens to you," she said, her voice calm and steady. "It's something you create. You notice the small joys, you give what you can, and you choose to see the light, even in darkness. It doesn't make problems disappear, but it changes how you live with them. The young woman listened intently, nodding, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. She thanked Martha and walked away slowly, carrying with her a seed of understanding that would grow over time. Martha felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that the lessons she had learned were not hers alone to keep. She had been given the gift of wisdom, hard-earned through struggle, and now she could pass it on, helping others find their own paths to contentment. Martha's days continued, filled with small but meaningful actions, each one reinforcing the principle she had embraced: joy is intentional, kindness multiplies, and gratitude opens the heart. She faced setbacks, of course, as life does, aches, disappointments, moments of loneliness. But she met them with the calm assurance of someone who had learned the secret: happiness does not come from avoiding life's challenges, but from embracing each day with an open heart and a willing spirit. Her transformation was most evident in her laughter, a sound that had been rare for so long but now flowed freely, ringing through the rooms of her house and spilling out into the street. It was a laughter that had endured sorrow, that had recognized pain, and that had emerged resilient and radiant. Friends and neighbors often commented on it, noting how contagious it was, how it seemed to lift the spirits of everyone around her. Martha understood that this joy was not superficial or fleeting. It was rooted in something deeper, a fundamental shift in how she related to the world. In quiet moments, she reflected on her journey, realizing that she had discovered a powerful truth: life would always bring difficulties, losses, and unexpected turns, but happiness could still exist within every moment. She understood that each day offered choices, and that by choosing gratitude, compassion, and mindful attention, she could create a life filled with meaning and joy. And in sharing this understanding, she found yet another layer of happiness, knowing that her experience could light the way for others. Martha's life, once shadowed by solitude and sorrow, had been transformed into a testament to resilience, perspective, and the extraordinary power of choosing joy. She had become living proof that even in the later years of life, when circumstances seem unchangeable, a heart can still discover profound happiness. She had found a way to embrace every situation, to see beauty in small moments, and to offer kindness freely, knowing that these actions ripple outward, touching lives in ways that are often unseen but deeply felt. And as she sat quietly one evening, the sun casting a golden glow across her small home, Martha smiled, fully aware that the secret she had discovered: that joy can be cultivated anywhere, at any time, by anyone willing to seek it, was a treasure more valuable than anything life could take away.